My name is Emily Kelsey, and I'm going to be reviewing Unit 5, Policies and Regulations. I'm going to start with my bulletin board posts. This was my thread. This is a discussion between Kristen and myself, and how she agreed with some of the statements I made, but also gave me a recommendation for her 4th and 5th graders, and how she would give like online assignments for homework, but that she'd give them a few days to complete them. So I'm considering doing the same thing with my kids next year. This was a conversation with Dr. Crawford. I just responded to her question about my focus on ethics for policies and regulations on my site. And for my case study, I'm doing it on my campus. And so we have to follow the rules and regulations of FERPA, which you're never, I would say, really thoroughly trained on. It's mentioned and you're warned, but you don't really understand the extent of it until you get in trouble, basically. And I remember when I first started, I wasn't sure how a kid went home. And I guess a parent had emailed me, and I was like, no big deal. And then the office called me, and then they were getting ready to like call the police. It was a mess. So, long story short, I grew up in a really small town, and it was really normal for you to just go home with anybody because it was a small town. You knew everybody. So for you to go to a friend's house after school was really normal. So I decided to actually include a picture of my town, and it looks even more depressing than I remember. Then Kristen's bulletin board, she actually had a great post. I thought it was really thorough, quick to the point, not as lengthy as mine, which is a fault on my part. And she really focused on safety. You know, policies and regulations are put into place for technology so that the individuals involved are safe, and that what they're using is their ideas, and that it's ethically put into place, but also the correct technology, which I thought was a great point to make. These are some notes that I took. Whenever I read the documents and the chapters, I kind of pull just information that I connect with, or that it's like new information that I either didn't know before I read, or that it kind of reinforced my beliefs. So this first one's about TRIPS and how trade-related aspects of intellectual property rights really was that push to just copyright anything, any sort of creative work that was expressed in any medium. So anything I post on Instagram is mine, and it's legally mine, unless I give the rights to someone else. And this kind of just alleviated a lot of the issues as far as registering for copyrights. ODL, one of the articles that I read, one of the links that did work, this discussed that online distance learning, there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't work, but that these 3 things really have to be put into place for ODL to actually work. So strategy, policies, and systems. It needs to be really planned out, similar to like our courses at UHCL. I can tell a lot of time was spent in preparing them. And then also that the system is put into place and that you're not just throwing something together so that you can bring in money, because like the article said, it ends up costing way more because no one's going to take the course if it's not put together well. So this is a connection within our text that ODL can be an extremely wonderful option, except a lot of countries not only don't have the money to start that process, the innovation, but they don't really have the infrastructure or the policies and plans put into place to do it on a wide scale, which is hard for us to envision, especially in CCISD. But when you think of the world as a whole, I could see that this could be an issue. Servant leadership is something that Dr. Crawford had mentioned earlier in this course, and I didn't really have a good grasp on what it was. I just went with it. And after reading this, I started to make some connections. I really appreciated on this extra resource document that the CEO for Greenleaf Center mentioned that there are 10 characteristics for the true development of servant leader. Listening, empathy, healing, awareness, persuasion, conceptualization, foresight, stewardship, commitments, and building community. And I really like that persuasion is in there because you've got to sell your ideas and sell what you're doing on your campus, for your company, or your organization. So then I found another document within the big resource pack where they also, well, they quote a ton of people in here for Greenleaf as well, but that the servant leaders achieve results for their organizations by giving priority attention to the needs of their colleagues and those that they serve. So it's like a reverse role. And that's really what a teacher is. You're concentrating on your students, the ones that you serve. If you lose focus on that, you lose all credibility and you lose all passion and that momentum. So now I finally understand what Dr. Crawford was talking about. And with us implementing tablets in our school and how it was, a servant leadership versus maybe a trickle down, or which one it was. Unit 5, notes for a case study connection. I'm doing a virtual learning space with a few members on my campus, and this just reinforced it. So I'm excited because I can use a source now in my research paper, but that there are 4 stages: entry, colleague, counselor, and then advisor. And each of these stages really drive professional development in someone's career, so self-improvement. And so it just helped me realize how important it is that I'm allowing teachers to share their expertise with each other and develop their minds and develop themselves. So I was really excited to find this source. This was just an interesting find for me. It was kind of hypocritical at the very bottom after discussing ethical behaviors that you can still discuss ethical behavior that might not match up with your own ethical behavior, but you're not necessarily supporting it. So I was like thinking to myself, you're basically saying not to encourage or support an unethical policy, but to acknowledge that it could exist. And I just kind of couldn't help but laugh because it's so true. It might exist and you have to acknowledge that it exists, but you're not necessarily supporting it by acknowledging that it does exist. Societal evolutions was probably my favorite thing to read about in this chapter and in these resources because it really broke things down into a more theoretical, like policies, rules, and regulations don't just exist for no reason. It's like a status quo that's been established through the society. So I'd always reference ethics as the actions to avoid consequences like they mentioned earlier in this resource, but in reality, I'm leaning more towards the idea that as a society, we kind of decide, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. And just culturally, you can jump into, let's say, a tribe, for instance, and it might be acceptable to walk around barefoot because you have a strong connection with the earth. But for us in society, generally, if you walk around without shoes on, you think someone's homeless. So it was kind of interesting. It was kind of very philosophical. So connections or recap on my case study and how it's going. I presented my practicum project and it went pretty well. I spent a lot of time in preparation, so that seems to always help things go a little smoother. I presented it and kind of reflected back with some of the members and had a few new people come and watch and then added them to the list. And we kind of discussed possible platform change to Padlet. So I included that on here so you can look at it. I think it's pretty interesting. And I also linked my presentation. It was about an hour long, so I had to put it on YouTube. Future plans, I am going to speak with my team of participants for my virtual learning space and kind of ask them which platform they like more and if they have any recommendations for a different platform that maybe I don't know about or that I'm not comfortable using. And then I would like to present it at the District Technology Conference, mostly because I want to spark or ignite the whole concept of a virtual learning space for a few other teachers. And then I would like to provide open access to everyone on our campus, just so they have a place to share their ideas with technology and a place to kind of zoom in on the experts of certain